there's a lot of friction in relationships because we get stuck in this place where we expect someone to be similar to us or just different than what they are.
Yes.
I can't tell you how often I've sat with partners that come to me and there's some friction, and like the question is like, is this a fundamental disconnection, or is it like that they just don't get each other?
Yes.
And honestly, the answer is often the latter.
Erin, this is our 4th episode.
That's crazy.
We've never done it in person though.
Yeah,
Actually, no, we did.
The first time.
Wait, is this our 5th episode?
We've
done a few. You came to my when I lived in downtown, and things were getting crazy. What was going on then? Was that like the start of the pandemic? I swear there was something cataclysmic going on.
Well, I think it was, because I do believe, because I was in San Francisco and LA doing events, and then like things were shutting down.
Yes, and you came over,
and
I remember.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, tell me. What do you remember?
Well, I remember that I had been like on the go and like giving all these talks and podcasts over like a week, and things were shutting down in New York City where I live. And I got to your house and I had like such a bellyache, and I was like so exhausted. And I walked in, I was like, I have to stop. My little projector self is so done. And you just welcomed me with open arms and fed me and let me lay down. And I was like, this is where I need to be.
I literally think you like laid down on the couch and we did the interview like as you were laying down.
I feel like I don't remember sitting up. So like I do feel like it was like must have been like a therapy situation.
That's perfect. Oh, Erin. And I was telling you, babe, before we started to record, I was like, wow, I'm like, you're our most downloaded episode. Because I'm pretty sure the first time we recorded, which was really like the first time that we met, was
the first time
2019.
Yeah.
Which I started this podcast in 2018.
Wow.
So yeah, you were our reigning champion, and you've been on the show more than anyone other than Leo Max.
What an honor.
Well, we're just obsessed with you, and you're such a wealth of freaking wisdom, babe. So for anyone who has never met you before, talk us through what you do in terms of human design.
So I work with a system called human design, which I imagine listeners are now familiar. But if you're not, it is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth, like astrology, that reveals how you're wired to operate at your best in every area of your life, from relationships to career to parenting. I have been working with the system for 10 years now, and my mission is really to make it as relatable and practical and accessible as it can be, and really to use it as a tool for empowered decision-making in every part of our lives.
And you have a book coming out.
I do.
Talk to us about this book.
The book is called How Do You Choose a Human Design?
This is my favorite part of human design, is all around the decision-making piece.
Exactly.
So we're going to really go into it.
Exactly. So it's a human design guide to what's best for you at work and love and in life. I think when I was thinking about writing a book, you know, there are so many amazing textbooks in human design, and I think that's honestly what all the books are. And I didn't want to create another one of those. It felt like it wasn't needed. And so my goal was really to create a book that was just like a real-time decision-making guide. You're at a moment where you're at a crossroads. Should I stay with this person? Should I go? Should I move to this city? What should I do about my business? And having a resource that you can open and be like, that's exactly what I'm supposed to do. And so it really is like a guide you're meant to use to navigate all the big and small decisions of your life. And it really focuses specifically on how human design can be applied to relationships and career.
So what is the core component in human design that helps us understand how we make decisions?
So a lot of pieces speak to it, but I would say the most important one is called authority. And that's the piece that speaks to how people can connect to their knowing. For you, it's all about kind of trusting your in the moment gut feeling.
Really? For me?
Yeah.
The sacral?
Sacral.
Okay, are there 5 different authorities? There's 7. Okay, do you mind walking us through what they are?
Of course not. So there's sacral authorities. And if you haven't yet looked your design up, you can at humandesignblueprint.com. So sacral for you is around kind of trusting that gut feeling in the moment. As soon as you get a full-bodied gut response, you don't need time for it to settle. It's just like there. And I would say the gut is not only a tool to help you know what to do, but also when to do it. Meaning that you might not get a gut feeling and then a week later, you're like, oh, I have to do it. The gut does not come with a reason. So if you find yourself saying, I think that I should do this because, it's not your gut. Your gut is like, it feels right or it doesn't. Don't know why. Trust that I'll find out why later. The other authorities, there's emotional. They're meant to sleep on things, give themselves a couple days to kind of feel into things. We have splenic authorities, all about kind of trusting your intuition in the moment. It's like a very fast, kind of spontaneous, instinctive hit. There are self-projected authorities who are meant to kind of speak things out loud and see how it feels to say it out loud. There are ego authorities, I know there are a lot, that are really meant to say yes, kind of based on what they desire, what they want, what they feel like motivated by, what they feel like they must have. There are mental authorities, which is all about kind of talking things out in different spaces and seeing what threads of truth stay true. And then finally, there are none authorities, also called wait a lunar cycle. And they're meant to give themselves a full month before they say yes.
Wow.
So I think it's really powerful to not only understand how we are wired to choose, but also understanding how the people around us are wired to choose. You know, I tell a story in the book of a partnership where one person was sacral authority like you. She knew in the moment, and they were trying to decide whether or not to move to the East Coast. And she's like, I know it, let's go. And she felt like her partner was waffling because she felt like every day he was saying something different. But his authority was called none, and he was meant to give himself a full month. So what she perceived as waffling was just his process of finding clarity. And so I think that human design is such an amazing tool to know how to make decisions also with people that are important to us and people that matter, because we might choose really differently.
God, there's something I always think about with astrology around it being a tool for compassion.
Totally.
And I feel like what you're saying, and because especially for me, just coming out of this long-term relationship, it's like, I definitely noticed all the ways I would not hold compassion around the differences in how my projector, Capricorn partner would move.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because especially being an Aries and being a Manny-gen and moving so quick, it's like, I know that I think he's emotional.
I think he is too.
I think he's emotional. So I'm pretty sure I judged him quite a bit on just what I perceived as like, you're taking too long, or you're not being like definitive. And how powerful to have this awareness. What about also in how we support like our kids and how we raise them, having this awareness of like their decision-making process instead of being like, you need to do this right now. What's your perspective on that? How this can help?
Oh my gosh, human design is such a cool tool in parenting, decision-making, and beyond. I think that my two daughters, the oldest one is a manifesting generator and the youngest is a manifester. And I just like love kind of walking into this experience with no expectation that they'll be anything like me. And so I think that like decisions are one piece, but I will say my 2-year-old and 7-month-olds aren't making a whole lot of decisions right now. So it's more just like, what are their needs according to their type? Like my manifestor daughter needs a lot of freedom. Manifesting generator daughter needs a lot of freedom to explore, do many things, use up her energy. So it's just such an amazing tool for parenting. And like one story that I share in the book was around a mother. Her son was a self-projected authority. So he had to talk things out, and she would always try to give him advice. And he felt so stifled and so annoyed. And then she learned his authority, and she's like, all he needs is a sounding board. He needs somebody to ask questions and then kind of just see what naturally bubbles up. And so it was very unnatural for her to do that. And yet like their relationship improved so much because he was like, I finally have a way to access my own truth. And so it's so powerful, I think, to know how to really support the people we love in reaching their own truth, which can be annoying, like you said, when it's not our way. But yet it's, I think, better for everybody when we're choosing from a place that actually feels authentic to us.
And it's just so interesting how we'll project our way of doing things onto someone else. And I feel like this just gives such a tool. Was there like a breaking point for you that got you really into human design? I feel like I know your story, but I need a refresher. Like what was really, especially for you being a projector, what was your experience like actually finding this system, and how did it first like give you permission to be more of who you are?
So human design came into my life 10 years ago, and I was living in New York City and went to a friend's party and sat next to a stranger who asked to read my human design chart. And he gave me the most accurate, insightful reading I'd ever experienced. That felt like he gave words to my inner experience in a way that felt like a little bit confusing from a stranger. I was like, how does he know? But I think a lot of what I learned from that first experience was that, one, I wasn't meant to rush into things. I was meant to be invited and not chase. And also that I wasn't meant to be this consistent doer. I was meant to like honor the ebbs and flows. And I was at a moment in my life where I was making very rash decisions. I was chasing everything. And like, I was relentless in my pursuit of making things happen. But he ended that conversation by saying, Erin, I think you're meant to do this. I think you're meant to share human design with the world, and basically invited me to study with him. And it's funny looking back because obviously that conversation shifted the course of my life. I don't think I would have studied human design if it wasn't for that invitation. And it wasn't because it wasn't meaningful. It was like so meaningful. I just don't think I like thought that it could be a possible career path, that like it was a thing that I could do. So it's such a good reminder for me, like my design is about being invited into things. And it's because I often like that shifts my path. Like those are kind of the entry points into the next phase for me. So that's how it all started. And I will say when I discovered my design, I was living opposite of it in every single way.
And something I utilize you as an example often, because especially when I was doing more business mentoring, for some reason, many of my clients were projectors, and I would always, and a lot of my students, and it was interesting. I was like, what is this projector Manny Jen vibe? But here's something I witnessed them get really caught up on is that wait for the invitation thing.
Yeah.
And I would always utilize you as this beautiful example where I was like, you guys, Erin didn't wait for me to find her. She sent me an incredible DM. You told me who you were. And how do you explain that to the projectors? I really want to touch in on this for a moment, because I feel like I've witnessed that in my work quite a bit, that projectors like can struggle a little bit until they like tell me more. I mean, I don't understand this whatsoever because my Manny Jen energy is just like a bit of a turbine, but it's like, tell us more about that, because you didn't wait for me to discover you.
Yeah.
To me, you like became an invitation and then I responded to you. So explain this.
So every type in human design will have a strategy. And maybe I said this already, but you can look up your type at humandesignblueprint.com. And the strategy for projectors is to be invited. And the idea is that you just carry gifts that are a little bit different. And so it's really useful to make sure that people clearly see you and value you before you engage with them when it comes to working with somebody or living with somebody or dating somebody. However, when I first discovered this, it felt really passive. I didn't understand how business could come to me waiting for an invitation. And so I think that it isn't passive because no strategy in human design is. But the key for projectors is to make themselves visible and to allow themselves to be seen. And for me, that has most generally shown up like sharing on podcasts, being in newsletters, sharing on Instagram, whatever it is, but like letting people see me and allowing the invitations to come. And there have been plenty of moments where there's like somebody that feels really resonant and reaching out, but reaching out in a way where it's like, I want to let them know that I exist.
Yes.
And I think one thing that I've really learned is that like most people, generators and manifesting generators, are here to just see what comes up in their world and how they respond to it. So you have to give people things to respond to.
Yes.
It's been interesting in this book launch because like there's been a lot of outreach, and it's been hard. I will say as a projector, like it's so exhausting for me.
Yeah.
And yet like I just have found the experience, like I'm not really good at hiring somebody else to do it because I'm just like the best at doing this for me. And so like it's not always sustainable to do, but also like I would say if you're going to reach out to people, like let people know you exist and give them a chance to respond.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, and I would say that like I don't say I enjoy doing it, but like that actually really has worked for me so many times. And so like I would say that the key is like once somebody chooses to engage, I would just make sure that you then feel really seen and valued by them, because that's the key to know whether to keep moving forward.
And I feel like the thing with you too is you made it very clear like how you were there to provide value.
Yeah.
Like you made it very straightforward.
Yeah.
You didn't make me guess. And obviously we also had a lot of amazing mutual friends in common, but I always love to utilize that, Erin, because it's like, I feel like I've witnessed so many women get really, really caught up with that.
Yeah. And I was honestly just writing an email for our newsletter today there was a reader question of a projector being like, I feel like I'm standing still in my life because there's so many things I want to do, but I'm like being held back by the invitation. And I did remind her in the email that like, one, invitations aren't needed for everything. You don't need it to start a podcast or move cities or make art, but to like really work with somebody deeply. Yes. And living with somebody and dating somebody. But I was also like, if you feel inspired to do a thing, do it. You can reflect later, like, did that work or not? But I think that like human design is a thing to experiment with. It's not here to hold you back in any way. Yes. And I will say that like, I was initially like, I'm not going to do any outreach because I'm a projector. And like, people didn't know that I existed, And so like, I had to find my own ways of sharing and getting myself out there so kind of the right people could come.
Okay. I want to switch gears because this is something I'm curious about.
Okay.
in relationships and dating,
Yeah.
how can we utilize our authority to make aligned decisions? Because this is such an important area of every person's life, our interpersonal dynamics,
Totally,
and love and connection. So how can we utilize our authority in human design to make better decisions?
Yeah. And also to hopefully make decisions that like will move you in a direction that feels really good.
Yes.
I actually have a question for you if you want to share. Like, I think that if we use you as an example, you're somebody who's meant to make decisions in the moment based on your gut feeling.
Yes.
It's one thing to hear your gut feeling. It's another thing to trust it.
Yes.
And so I would say when it comes to dating, that means that like, I would trust your like guttural feel when somebody shows up in your world. Like, do you feel drawn to them physically?
Yes.
Like, do you feel like you like want to be around them? Do you feel like there's like a pull, or is it kind of like a contraction and like a sense of like deflation? But I tell a story in the book, and I'm getting to my question, but I tell a story in the book about this woman named Lauren. And when I sat with her, she was about to get married, but she was feeling really out of alignment. And I remember having a conversation and asking her really, you know, in a straightforward way, like, do you want to get married? And she was like, no, because often people need these specific questions with gut feelings. And then I asked her, when did you know he wasn't right for you? And she said, from the minute I entered the relationship. And so like her gut instinct was always speaking to her, but the work was in trusting it. So I guess like my question for you is, you're obviously going through a big transition in your life, you know, moving out of your marriage into a new phase. Like, what was your relationship to your gut in this relationship? Like, do you feel like it was speaking loudly? Was it hard to trust? Like, given that like that gut instinct, that like non-logical, that just like visceral feeling is your guide, like what role did it play?
God, such a great question. I mean, truthfully, the process that I'm in right now is forgiving myself for ignoring my knowing.
Yeah.
I had to ignore everything I really wanted to stay in my relationship. And when I think about core moments, because even, you know, you and I have been friends for quite a few years, and I was reflecting with you last night how I remember calling you once and just telling you, you know, we were having issues. And the year that we got married, ironically, was like the hardest year of our relationship, which is interesting. You'd think maybe that wouldn't be the case. But I was thinking back to a moment when I called you and I was talking to you about how I was feeling and what was going on. You know, at this point, this is, you know, 3 years ago. And I remember I can even in this moment tap into this sinking feeling. And I had to ignore that for years. I not even say I had to, I chose to. I let my mind, and it's not because I didn't love and don't still love and care for this human being immensely, but I really had to not listen to myself. And you can see it even, it's been so beautiful because my gals in my community, they're like, boo, you've had a glow up. Like you look, they're like, you're glowing and you just look lighter and more happy. And I really realized like, when we're not living how we want to live and when we're not listening, I was holding a lot. And again, it wasn't because of, I'd say, this person or anything to do with them. It had everything to do with me ignoring my truth. And so us talking about this honestly is so beautiful because now my decision coming out of this, I mean, and it was more so the day that we decided to get divorced, I mean, I asked him, I said, do you want to work on this still? And it was a very clear, and he's a projector. I think emotional authority. And I just remember him saying like, no, I don't. I'm not working on this with you anymore. We've already worked on it. And for some reason, that single statement liberated me. And I was like, fuck, I don't want to work on this. I was like, I have been just trudging, and a pattern I've noticed in myself over the years, and I don't know if this is normal for sacral beings, but I remember even a couple years ago working with a mentor, and I was attempting to rewrite this frickin' sales page for my business school and blah, blah. And I literally was getting migraines trying to do this. And finally he's on the phone with me and he goes, why are you doing this still? And I was like, I have to. And he goes, no, you don't. What do you want? And I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. And the second I said it, I literally felt like I took a hit of acid. Like I had a breakthrough. And then I started to study more about my sacral.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why are you not listening to this? Why is it so hard?
Yeah.
I will say now it is not hard for me to listen to whatsoever. But in the past, I've noticed it's been very hard for me to listen to that guttural knowing.
Yeah, it is. Again, I think it's helpful to distinguish between like hearing your truth and trusting it, because the trusting can be really hard. And I even think back to our conversations and like, it does feel, as it's true for all of us, there was a lot of like convincing.
Yes.
And I think that like for anyone with a sacral authority, like listen to how you talk about a thing, because the gut feeling sounds like this thing feels right or it doesn't. Like that's it. That's all there is to say about it. And then the non-gut is very much like, maybe it will lead to this. Maybe this will change. Like this will happen. And so like, it's so easy for these people to get that gut feeling and then immediately go into their mind and to kind of talk themselves out of it. So like in the realm of dating, the work is to trust it. And it means that you might be drawn to people you didn't expect. Or you might want to end a thing that you don't know why. But like that's the vibe. And like, for me, I'm an emotional authority. Like for recommendation for these people is like courtship. Take your time, like slow, feel into somebody, don't rush into it. So I think it really helps us know how to engage in dating. And like, I don't know, it's so easy to say yes to a relationship and then kind of get trapped, because it's really hard to get out sometimes.
Totally.
Because it's a big deal to
end
a
big
thing.
deal. Yeah.
So I think choosing from this really authentic place from the outset can make such a big difference.
And, I'll say too, I think actually I'd rather pose this more as a question, but I remember I heard something a couple years ago, and I love how human design puts this so simply, but essentially how when our lives are in disarray, according to human design, a lot of times it's because we're living in our programming versus living in our authentic design. What are your thoughts about that? Because I feel like that's something that feels resonant for me, but also that in the past I have struggled with a lot, like a lot. The shoulds. And ignoring the deeper knowing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like with, I have 2 young kids, and I feel like kids express their design so purely. Like, and I hear this from so many parents. They just like look at their kids and they're like, they're just being their design. Like there's just no holding back. And then I feel like as we get older, we look at how others are doing things and we often kind of start to hold back a little bit. We try to emulate how others are doing things and we kind of lose connection to that authenticity. And that's often not until later in life that we're like, oh, like I'm actually allowed to be like that. So, whatever the type, I just feel like it's so easy to get conditioned into how we think we're supposed to be doing things. Manifesting generators feel like they're too scattered for being multi-passionate. Manifestors like stop initiating because they feel like it's too much. Projectors feel guilty for taking rest. Generators take on everything themselves. Reflectors try to be one thing. Like whatever the type is, we try to be what we're not. And so like why that is, like I think there's a lot of thinking and pressure and watching what works for others and assuming what will work for us. And I think human design does this really amazing thing of returning us to like, what is your blueprint? It's different than Natalia's, and it's different than your mom and your dad and your sister and your best friend and that entrepreneur on TV. It's different. So I think that we all face that. And I think that the magic of the authority in human design and then kind of the decision-making piece is it helps us choose what's best. And I think when we're doing that, everything else will fall into place.
Absolutely. I want to like get into like a little nitty gritty around dating and relationships for each of the authorities.
Okay.
Like what are some tangible examples where it's a yes or a no, whether it's like you're in a partnership, and obviously that can get complicated because when you're in, it's like, you're like, my gut is saying I don't like you today, but it's like, how do we trust the yes and trust the no and not act too expediently or act expediently if that's what's needed? What would you say? I mean, I don't know if we want to kind of tackle
let's do it.
Dating versus being in a relationship, or what feels the best to put them together.
Well, why don't we talk about kind of like what the yes and no feels like for each, and then we can assess. I think like for the gut, for the sacral people, a yes for you is going to feel like this expansion in your body. Like it's going to feel like your body's opening up and it's feeling like pulled towards the person. Like every time they ask you out, whether it's new or old, you're like, yes, I want to do that. You feel this like undeniable draw. you know, it's funny that you describe this sinking feeling, because one of the stories I tell in the book is when somebody also knew their relationship was ending, and she described it identically, where it was like they were having one conversation and then just had this sinking feeling where she's like, it's over.
Wow.
You know, and so like, and in a way that she was like, didn't expect. And so like, it is this very physical thing in your belly. And like, you're right. Like you might be in an argument and be like, ugh, I don't want to be around you, and feel differently the next day. But I think that like, I would pay attention to the patterns there. And one of the best ways to connect to your truth as a sacral authority is to have very specific questions. So like, you know, had we talked at maybe a moment when you were trying to decide what to do, like I would have asked you, like, do you want to be with him? Does this feel like the right time to end it? You know, like I think when people are asked very specific questions like that, it can be very confronting.
Yes.
You know?
Very.
But also very honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, even in the realm of business, like often I'll talk to people and they'll like talk about a decision for 20 minutes. Then I'm like, do you want to do it? They're like, no. So like I would employ that, especially as you're dating right now. Like have good friends ask you, like, do you want to keep dating this person? Like, does the timing feel right to pursue this person? Because like what I would trust is like, what is the visceral response before your mind even has a chance to get in the way?
Dang, babe.
You know
That's
what I mean?
so, oh, I love it so much. I mean, and I want to hold here for just a moment, because it's like that visceral, that's been like my favorite word lately, but it's like that visceral energy. Like, how do we allow ourselves to trust that?
I know.
Like, it's really is like an allowance.
Totally. And again, that's why I think it's helpful to separate like the feeling and the trusting.
Yeah.
Because I think when people ask you in really specific ways like that, you can't really deny it. You know, like I feel like you probably had all these whispers, but it was like, okay, but if somebody's like, do you want to be with him? And your answer is no.
Yes.
Then it's like, oh man.
Yeah. And no one ever asked me that. Like it was, and which makes sense. I mean, we've been together for a couple years and then we got married, which is obviously such a big deal. And it was a big investment for us, like of not only, you know, our finances, but also commitment. So it's almost like a little bit of the social mores, like to ask someone so point blank. And yet, you know, I did have a conversation with two of my best friends, Gala and Krista. Gala's a manifestor and Krista's a generator. And it was interesting because at the end, I remember like I knew when I told both of them and I was really honest about how I was feeling, then that's when they started to ask me really strong questions. But I told them in the moment, I said, back in December, I was like, I'm not ready to make this decision yet. I just wasn't ready. And then the day it happened, I mean, I was ready. It just like unlocked. But yeah, God, it's still something I'm majorly processing because it's like, of course. Yeah, I definitely have moments where I'm like, oh, why did I let this go for so long when I just knew it wasn't totally right. Yeah. And I have such empathy for people that struggle with that. Yeah. Or maybe are in something and they're like, maybe they're sacral being like me and they know, but they're scared. I think the thing is I was scared. And I had a story also that told me that I need to be with this person. Like this is a must. So, and as soon as that story was willing to, you know, drop away, then it's like I could allow more of the truth of what my body was saying. Yeah. And now moving forward into dating, my commitment to myself is body awareness. Yes. Which I would say is sacral awareness. 100%. Because my body tells me everything. It tells me everything. When I'm standing or sitting with someone, especially I'd say a man, like I think a part of me died that ever felt like I needed them to do or approve of me. And now it's like I can be more in my essence as a woman and just really witness and be attuned to that part of me is how I would translate that. Yeah. And I think that like it is interesting when people are disconnected from their gut as sacral authorities. I think my first recommendation is always like reconnecting to their belly, like get in their body. When a thing shows up, it's like, is there the pull or the push? And I also think what you said is really important is that like your gut might say yes or no to a person, but the timing also plays a role. Yes. Like the answer, like often I'm like, if somebody wants to start a business, I'm like, do you want to start it? They're like, yes. And I'm like, is now the time? They're like, no. Yes. You know, so like it also might be a thing where you're like, I know this isn't right, but I also don't know if it's time to leave. And like, I think even the example you shared on that last day is like very much a manifesting generator response where it's like, he was like, I don't want to work on it. And your body was just like,
No.
My response was like, yay.
Yes. And
not,
also like,
not yay. Like, I mean, it was still very sad, but my body was like, finally.
Yeah. It felt like
you can hear the clarity.
Exactly.
Thank God, because it was confusing. And and the reason I bring that forward as well is because when I look back at pictures of myself and also how much I was struggling with my body, with eating, I was eating a lot. I was emotionally eating a lot. And again, that's kind of ways to like dull down the signals of the body. Was like, I was just getting my emotions really met through food. And I was really on that wheel for a while. So yeah, for any sacral beings, I don't know if and I think that's a lot of people, right? Generator and Mani-gens.
Yeah, not all of them, but a lot of them, about half are
really?
sacral
Not
authorities.
all are sacral.
That's right, because half of them are emotional. And so then half of them are going to like, for emotional authorities, when it comes to relationships, like my recommendation really is courtship.
I love that because it gives space.
Like you just like need space to like feel into like somebody on all sides of your emotional wave, like in different environments and different moods, and like see what feelings stay consistent. And like, while some people might have the capacity to jump in immediately, you're just not one of those people. And so really taking your time to feel into people. Yeah. And I think that a lot of emotional authorities feel that pressure to make decisions fast.
Wow. Okay.
So really giving yourself time to be slow. And that also like is true for decisions inside relationships. You know, like even with you and your former partner, it's like, if you're choosing, you might be like immediately clear. And he was like, I need time.
Yes.
And like, they just need time for all the things. They need time for kind of things to just like settle and feel clear. You know, this is obviously like an extreme example, but like I knew my husband for 4 years before we started dating. So like emotional is not like take 4 years, but like.
Are you an emotional authority? Yeah. Okay. What is he?
He's sacral, like you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And but I think it was a lesson. Like it was so helpful to feel into him on all these different sides of my emotional wave and all these different experiences, you know? And I do think of past relationships that kind of began in a bit more of a rash way. So I would recommend for these people, take your time. And see how it feels and give yourself permission to change if it doesn't feel right.
Yes.
Splenic authorities, they're like, you're going to have a whisper like in the moment. There's a story that I tell in the book of somebody who met somebody and she like immediately heard a voice that was like, that's your person. And like, she had not historically connected to her intuition. So she's like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm in partnership. Like, it didn't make sense. But she just let it go, you know? And then like a year later, she like saw him again and it was like the same vibe and her partnership had ended and like they started dating. And it was just like, it was such a cool example of like her intuition was really speaking to her. And then it spoke again based on timing. Like, now is the actual time to explore it. But if you're a splenic authority, like it's this whisper of your intuition that's going to speak your truth, that's going to tell you your truth. And one thing to be aware of is you're so sensitive to others. So if you're dating somebody, it's really easy for you to get consumed by other people's feelings or their feelings about your relationship. And so giving yourself sufficient space to see what your intuition is really telling you.
Wow, that's for splenic. Interesting.
Then there are self-projected authorities. I would say one thing to look out for in dating and relationships is like, you are somebody who finds your truth by speaking things out loud. So like, it doesn't have to be a partner, but I think having people, and honestly, ideally a partner in your life who's a really good sounding board. These people do not do well when people tell them what to do. Like, you need somebody who just like asks you questions and like their job is to pull your truth out of you. So I think like really considering who in your life makes you feel seen, asks you questions, like doesn't overwhelm you with their opinions, is more curious about like what your voice is telling them, is such an important piece for these people. Ego authorities, you know, they have so much heart and will, and they're honestly like so loyal in relationships. Like when they like feel like a yes, like they're like such insanely amazing friends. You definitely have this in your design too, because you have that defined ego. But I would say in relationships, having a sense of reciprocity. I feel like these people have so much to give and to feel like they're receiving so much in return, where it's like, they're like, I feel like all my power to give and show up is being so reciprocated that's like allowing me to show up more. So I would actually encourage you to actually use that as another factor in your relationships, because like you just bring a lot of heart to relationships and it's easy to overgive and have that be taken advantage of because you have so much capacity.
Like, this sounds familiar.
No, I'm definitely not about you. And
so like, sounds like my Venus and Pisces, just lover energy.
So like, but I think I would say, according to your human design with that, like you have to feel like you're receiving a lot, because receiving a lot is the thing that empowers you to show up more. And it creates this like really healthy cycle. But like if you're just over giving, like it obviously will burn you out.
Gosh, that's incredible. So just a quick aside, the splenic, how can someone have like, I'm sorry, not splenic.
How could they have multiple?
Ego. How does that show up in someone's chart?
In like why do you have that too?
Yes.
So we all have like a primary authority.
Okay.
So you'll have one. So your sacral authority, I'm emotional, but we do have other centers defined in our design that can play a role. So even though your sacral authority, you've got a defined ego. And like, so that basically means that like that also plays a role.
I love you. You just know my chart. And I know you just re-looked at it.
I know.
For the first time in forever.
I know. But I think it's fun to kind of look at those other elements too, because it's like, oh, that also will play a role. But we all will have one primary one. Mental authorities, I would say part of how a relationship is right for you is, you also need a lot of space to talk things out. So I think having somebody who's a really good sounding board for you, but also doesn't take it personally when you're like, I need to go talk things out with somebody else. I need space away from you. Like I need to go be in my own energy. Like having that freedom is so key. These people also like really take their time with things. So you really don't want to be with people who rush you. Like you'll know a relationship is right when you're like, I've talked things out with many people and like it just consistently feels good. And then lunar authority means, or none, or weighted lunar cycle is you are like a relationship should feel right to you over the course of a month.
Wow.
Or you're in a relationship and you're making a big decision and like you have this space to decide.
Wow.
You're like, I like you this week and after this week. So I think that like they often don't feel permission to have that space.
I'm just having a moment because, I'm always talking to my besties and women in my life and the dating process and just what they're going through and the questions and the he's doing this or not doing that. And it's so interesting because I'm like, do y'all know the man's, like, find out the man's human design chart?
Totally.
Because even just to be able to have this awareness, I think could save all of us a lot of headache and heartache, especially in the beginning when you're just getting to know someone. It's like understanding, again, bringing it back to that tenet that we all make decisions uniquely. And imagine, because obviously, like if you look on like Instagram or social media, there's such like sort of textbook advice, but it doesn't apply for everyone. It's like you have to look at people individually and not take it as best you can, not take it personally.
I know.
So that's like, to me, from what you're sharing, like it does bring a layer of awareness, especially whether you're in a relationship or you're dating.
Either. Yeah. I think I feel like there's a lot of friction in relationships because we get stuck in this place where we expect someone to be similar to us or just different than what they are.
Yes.
I can't tell you how often I've sat with partners that come to me and there's some friction and like the question is like, is this a fundamental disconnection or is it like that they just don't get each other?
Yes.
And honestly, the answer is often the latter. And I think human design is such an amazing tool to be like, oh, this person's just different. They need more time with decisions. They need more rest than I do. Like they need to be asked specific questions. Like they need to process on their own. Like whatever the thing is, it gives us the tools to really understand somebody in a very unique way, whether it's our child or our partner. And like astrology, I think it just brings so much compassion to relationships. So like, whether you're dating somebody or married to somebody or whatever, like, I just think it's so helpful to know, like, who is this person and how can I best support them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's just really tailored. And like you said, it's like, we just get really stuck in like, this is what it should be like. And maybe they should be like me. And like, we're just all different.
Oh my gosh, babe. So I want to go into a little bit of like your process writing this book, because I remember when this came into your life and just like, what a celebration. Like, how did you source the stories and examples and just like, and again, like, what do you really want people to take from this and really run with when it comes to understanding how they make decisions?
Well, my hope, to answer the second question first, I think my real hope with this book is that people not only read the chapters about themselves, but they read the chapters about their kids and partners and parents and friends and all the people, because every time I return to a chapter about generators and relationships, like my husband, I like learned something new, even though I wrote it, but I realized something new about our dynamic and how I could better support him. Every time I read about like manifestors and read about my daughter, my 7-month-old, I'm like, oh my God, this is why. So like, it's just like such an insanely cool tool for relationships. I think to the story question, I think a really important part of this process was making sure the book was story driven. Like, I don't know, actually, I'd be curious, like, there are no stories in any human design book I've ever read, but like also none in any astrology book I've ever read. Have you read one?
That's a weird one, isn't
like,
it?
You would think.
Yeah, that's actually a crazy point right there.
Like I was thinking, I was like, obviously not obviously, but I know in human design because I know all the books, but like astrology, I'm like, I've never read a book that actually is around what happens when people integrate astrology into their lives and what it actually looks like in practice. And so
it's the way I've seen it done, and I can't think of any like specific books at the moment, but sometimes what astrologers who author a book will do is they'll post a chart, and then they'll go through and they'll talk through like the placement and then how that expresses in the client's life. That's the closest thing I would say I've ever seen. Most astrology books, like some of the human design books that I've read, it feels very like it's just explaining the system.
Right. And I think that like that's what, and again, I love these human design books. They're like
same.
Great.
That's how we learned.
It's how we learn. Yeah. It's like, thank God for these textbooks. And like
it's like evolving it.
Yeah. When I started writing this book, I also knew that like I didn't need to create another one of those because they exist. And like, I'm actually not sure that like another one's needed because they are actually quite diverse already. What I did feel like was needed was a very practical exploration of how the system could actually be used in our lives for people that love human design and have been studying it for years, and people that have no idea what human design is, actually don't care, but are interested in making decisions better and in a clearer way. So to me, it felt like stories were a huge part of that. You know, I've sat with 4,000 people over the past many years, and I have all my little session notes. And so, you know, I would just go through and select stories and combine stories and really kind of find ways to really illustrate the concepts in a way that made sense. And, you know, there were many stories that I wrote and then I deleted, and it was just like, obviously such an exploration, but I think it was really trying to find a diversity of ways to represent the concepts, you know, having stories around relationships and career and roommates and kids and all the things. But it was definitely my favorite part of writing, and actually something that really, writing the book was hard, but something that happened in the last 6 weeks was that I introduce each chapter by talking about a celebrity and exploring how like an element of their human design has shown up in their life. And like, that was actually so fun to kind of look at somebody's design and research their life and like understand a moment where their design was really showing up. Like, for example, Rosalind Carter, Jimmy Carter's wife, was a reflector. Really? And like, when you look back on his reflections of her, it's like so much around how like she was like the wisest source of like, you know, advice and perspective, and like, and just kind of became this like trusted source of insight. And like, it was just like so, and could like see things before anyone else did. Like the way he described her was like so insanely aligned with the reflector piece that I was just like, this is crazy. So there were just like so many moments like that were so fun to kind of be like, without knowing their design, like how do these things actually show up in their lives? So that was really fun at the end, kind of including those stories.
Is there a specific example of human design decision making that, I know you already shared a few examples, but is there one that really stands out to you, that really speaks to you? The roommate one is interesting. I'm like, what's up with the roommates?
Oh my God, the roommates.
I'm like, what's going on with the roommates?
Yeah, that was a reflector story. I think that, okay, let me think. The one that honestly comes up is like a story that I told about Warren Buffett. And like, it's this moment in 2008 with the financial crash, and his authority is emotional and he's meant to give himself time. And so basically like tells a story of like how everyone was like selling and it was like chaos. And he was just like, just stay put. You know, and he was like, just like maintain this like patience and like calm throughout the process. And then he like made all these decisions that ended up really working out for him. And he kind of like advised the US government, but it was so interesting because the way he described his process was like, I don't make impulse decisions. I like take my time. I feel into things. And then I tell a story of Taylor Swift, who like, you know, basically made this like wild decision to like re-record all of her albums and like just like commit an insane amount of resources and time to do it. And it was based on this like flash instinctive thing. And she's like, I make these fast decisions. So like, it's just so funny to like hear them describe it in a way where you're just like, what? How are you doing it? So I think those stories are fun. God, but like even, you know, there are ones that extend beyond authority. Like there's a story that I tell of a couple. There was a manifestor And manifestors really need autonomy and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in a relationship, a long distance relationship that allowed a lot of that autonomy and freedom. Actually, I have a great story that you're going to love. Okay. But anyways, like that allowed all that autonomy and freedom. And then they moved in together and she started feeling very confined and cramped and interpreted it as like, we're not meant to be together. And when we sat together, I was like, I don't know if it's like you're not meant to be together or just like the conditions have made it hard for you to maintain your autonomy as a manifestor. And like, I think you just don't feel free. And so through our conversation, she was like, oh, like I need more space. So they ended up having separate bedrooms, building in more space for themselves throughout the week and like really found their flow again. So like, I love that example because it was again, like nothing was wrong with them, but their dynamic was not supportive of them. The story that I know you'll love is a story that I tell from my own life. And I was hesitant to include it because I like don't really share much from my own life, but it's about the invitation as a projector. And it's about how my relationship with my husband started. And I think it hopefully gives people more permission with the invitation piece. But we had a long journey. I met him in 2013. I was working for a company. He owned a company at the time that our company hired. And he invited me to go work with him. And so like that was an amazing invitation as a projector. I ended up going to work with him. And then we became really good friends. And then we became best friends. And but then like we kind of reached a point where we were each other's favorite person, but it wasn't romantic. And everybody in our life was like, you guys are like totally in love, you know? And he like even said he was in love, but like, it was just like, we couldn't really figure it out. And I'm sitting here as a projector and I have to be invited. And yet like, I just knew there was a thing there. And I basically kind of reached a breaking point for myself where I was like, there's nobody that I felt more recognized by in my life than him. And yet like, we're really scared to tiptoe into this new territory. And so I remember sitting with him in New York City. And this is the story I tell where we were at our like favorite cafe. And I told him, I was like, you know, if you're not choosing this because you feel scared, then like, I actually can't really engage with you right now because like, I'm trying really hard in my life to be brave and you're not choosing that. But like, if this doesn't feel right to you, then like, of course, that's fine. Like, let's be friends. And so then I just got up and left. I like, just was like, I'm kind of done with this dynamic for now. But it was a moment where I felt so recognized by him that I felt permission to give him a thing to respond to. And it was that conversation where he like literally came over to my house the next day and like our relationship began. And so like he kind of needed that moment to respond. But I think for me, I felt so energetically recognized by him that I felt like I had to like state my piece and like give him a thing to respond to. But it was not like, I need to be with you. It's just like, this is where we are. And like, you can respond or not, but like, I actually kind of need an answer because like this in between is not for me anymore.
Wow.
So I do think it's worth whatever your strategy, giving yourself permission to experiment and kind of seeing what actually works for you.
I mean, and it's so beautiful. And I think, Erin, this is why you and I have just, you know, been friends for so long and had such an enduring connection. And not only just because of who we are as women, but for me as an astrologer and you as a practitioner and teacher of human design, it's like we love people and we love helping people understand themselves. And we've utilized our own lives to, I joke with people that I am a social scientist. And I feel like in what you're sharing, it's like looking at yourself and looking at the people in your life. And it's like looking at your clients. It's just so cool. Like, I feel like we both are just could geek out on this because it's the coolest thing to see the intelligence of the system, how helpful it is and how it expresses in the actual lives of people to help them live better. And I think there is no place in our lives that gets the stickiest other than bad decision making. And my whole, you know, prayer and work with myself is around choosing differently. Like obviously in my life right now, it's around relationships and learning the deep lessons that I've had to learn through my romantic partners over the years. But it's beautiful because the whole breakthrough has literally been around choice. What choice do I make? And that's huge.
It is.
And it's so cool to hear how you did that with your man.
Yeah.
Like I've never heard you talk about that.
I know it is. It's funny looking back because like, I wasn't even like, I have to be invited, but it was just like, I was more trusting my instinct around how to approach it. And then looking back, I was like, oh, of course I did it that way. But I think that you're really right that like, I do think when we make decisions that feel right, everything in our life is easier.
Yes.
And
everything comes down to it.
Yeah. Because like you might choose hard things and like things might not be easy, but like, it's the right experience for you.
Yes.
Whereas I think when we're choosing from what we think we should do, then like there's a lot of hesitation and questioning, and we're kind of like out of the experience.
Absolutely.
And so like, I just think when we bring more intention to how we choose, again, everything else centers around that. And like, you're at such a fun sandbox moment in your life where it's like, okay, like I'm going to explore different people. How can I choose in the way that feels the most true?
Yes.
But I do think that like, I think a lot of us feel indecisive when there's actually a pretty clear path to knowing what's right for us. And I think human design reveals it.
Well, I cannot wait to read this book, and I'm so proud of you, because I know no matter what, books are a labor of love. And you already have two labors of love who are really young.
Yeah.
So Erin, where can my angels find you? How can we get our hands on this book? Give us all the goods, babe.
So the book is called How Do You Choose? A Human Design Guide to What's Best for You at Work and Love and in Life. You can find it anywhere books are sold. We also sell our blueprint guides, which are basically hyper-personalized guides all about you. The discount code Natalia works. That's at humandesignblueprint.com. And then I'm at Erin Claire Jones and Human Design Blueprint on Instagram.
I love you so much. I mean, we popped off those guides a couple years ago.
We did.
Like, I feel like my babes were just like, give me the HD guide. Like, and then I was laughing because I was like, Erin, you're our most downloaded. And you were like, and I was like, I didn't record for a few months. You're like, oh, so we were the only option. I was like, no, it's because it was you.
And I was like, it was the only one I saw.
And then all my girls would be like, okay, when are we having Erin back? And can she talk about this? And so I just love you so much. It's been the best. And to do this in person, so profesh.
Well, I don't think we even talked about how magical this was.
This happened because of you, by the way.
Right.
Let's actually talk about that in closing.
I think that like Natalia and I were texting the other day. How did it start though?
No, babe, you're the best. Because just going to your astrology really quick, like you're Taurus, and Taurian women are so great for me because, or earth sign women in general, I'd say. But, going through all the transition I was going through, I really was terrible with my phone, like not texting back, not calling back, really just not being a good friend.
Yeah.
And I remember finally one day you got a hold of me and I told you what was going on.
No, wait. Anyways, you keep talking. I don't remember anything.
Let me take this one, babe.
Yeah, go ahead.
But literally it was like, I just remember like you calling me and I was like, Erin, listen. I'm like, this is what's going on. And you're like, listen, you are going to get through this and everything is going to be okay. And I'm going to see you soon. And then I think like 2 months later, when my life finally calmed down, you called.
Yeah.
And then we organized this whole thing.
Well, right. I was like, I'm going to be in LA these days. And you're like, I'm going to be in LA these days. And I was like, I'm staying at this hotel. And you're like, I'm going to stay at that hotel. And like, we literally are just here together.
No.
It's just like
dinner tonight.
And we're having dinner tonight.
I mean, and even like, I remember when you invited me, my Taurus projector queen invited me to New York for your baby shower. And like, I do now, but at that era of my life, when I had a lot going on and I was juggling a lot in my relationship, I just didn't leave very much.
Yeah.
And I remember you asking me and instant sacral yes. I was like, girl, I will fly to New York. I didn't even like flying at the time, but I was like, I will fly to New York. I had so much fun. Had the best time meeting your people. And
then one more story of you and your sacral authority. There was another time I was in LA and I don't remember why, maybe for podcasts. And I was like, Natalia, I'm going to LA. And you lived, I think, in Lagoon Beach at the time. And you're like, I'm going to come stay for a couple nights and just be in LA. Do you remember this?
Wait, when was that?
And that's when we went to Ojai too.
Oh, the Ojai trip. That was so fun.
That was so fun.
That was amazing.
That was really amazing.
I went up with Hella.
Yeah.
And we were like in
Blue.
Yeah, and Blue. Yeah. And we were in a Suburban together.
Oh my God.
And I just remember being like, this is epic. Like my life is really epic, just cosmic. And then we all sat down and we like told each other what we loved about each other, even if we didn't know each other. I got a compliment that day I've never forgotten.
What was it?
It was one of your friends. I don't remember her name. I remember she was brunette.
Lavina or Amber. You and Lavina have like a real fit.
Yeah, we're magical.
Yeah.
I love my New York queens. Like I love a New York energy. Like it's It's just for me. It's for me. Yeah. And I love that city so much. I'm going to come visit you soon. Yeah. So even though I know you're in the woods, but I will come.
I still go to the city.
I will come. Yeah. But it's interesting because I just remember someone acknowledging me. It must have been Lavina. I feel like there was another gal there too. But I remember her just being like, the moment I saw you, you just have a presence that is so commanding. It was like, I felt really witnessed, and we had been there for 10 minutes. Like we had been in that car ride for 2 hours because we were in traffic. And then it was like landing with you and just, yeah, you're just the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks for just popping in my DMs all those years ago.
Oh my God. Thank God.
It really worked out for us.
Again, a reminder, you don't know when it's going to start. And like, it's moments really like this where it's like, it is so good to put ourselves out there in ways that feel authentic, and because like that's how it all began for us.
I know.
And look at us really many years later, many podcasts, many years, bi-coastal hangs.
Like, I know, babe. And like so connected. And like you're one of those friendships for me too, where it's like, I know even if we don't talk for a little while, the love is there. You've obviously also been so loving and patient with me because my Aries sometimes with like communication. I'm getting better, but it's silly goose energy, and you always love me through it. And here we are so many years later. And it's just a gift. And I'm just so proud of you. And it's like to be also with women where you just so authentically feel so accepted. There's no weird energy. It's literally like, I remember when you messaged, I think it was a small group chat of us, that you got this book deal.
I know,
I was over the moon for you. Like it gave me tears in my eyes, because it's just like to see the women you love who are so rooted and embodied in what they're doing, and then to start to have really major wins.
Yeah.
I love when you told me, we won't say any names, when you told me the podcast you're doing this week, and I was like, girl, who's that?
I know, you're so hilarious. I was just like, this is the biggest thing I've ever been on. You're like, I don't know who that is. And I was like, Natalia, that was not the reaction I was expecting.
But then once you explained, I was like, okay, I am stoked, so genuinely excited.
Oh my God, no.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh my God, I love you so much.
Love you. This has been the best.
Always.
Thanks, baby.
Thank you.
Okay, my angels, love you so much. Bye-bye.